I'm not a baby, I'm a man. I am an anchor man. I'm a man who discovered the wheel and built the Eiffel Tower out of metal and brawn. That's what kind of man I am. Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. I am Brad, and that is John Combest. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning to you, Brad.
It is the 21st of January, 2026. This is the A block, which means we start the top of the hour. You know, that's an interesting thing. Do you think the young kids understand what top of the hour and bottom of the hour means anymore? It's a clock position, but if you don't have a clock with hands on it, how would you know what the top and the bottom of the hour is, right?
I don't think they have any idea, Brad.
Let's call some. Can you get one of your kids on the air and we'll ask them, say, hey.
Absolutely not. The most I want to expose them to Brad Hildebrand, pause, is when they hear Westplex 107.1. And Brad, I have to confess that over the weekend,
yes,
the biggest hit in the Combest house was that song.
Yes.
As much as I, like to make fun of you for lyrics that sometimes aren't 100%, my kids love that song. Now, Brad, I can't find that on YouTube anywhere. You post 8-second clips labeled unknown to our YouTube channel, but I don't think you've posted Westplex 107.1 theme song.
John, I'm waiting on a new piece of equipment to take my video editing to the next level. That's all I'm saying.
Take it and that's how we know if you're ever listening to a commercial on Westplex 107.1 or Westplex Talk 104.5, and you hear somebody say they're going to take it to the next level, that's how you know it's a Brad Hildebrand.
Actually, it's just a piece of software. That's all it is. So, but anyway, what John Combest does is every single day of his life for the past 24 years, he puts together this incredible website with all this important information you should know about that goes on in the state of Missouri. Now, a lot of people may say, oh my God, they will go to John's website and they go, OMG, there's 56 articles here, 56 links. But what we do is we help those people who are like me, riddled with ADD, where we count down the top 3. We bring in this dude right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he counts them down, and we start off with...
In third place,
a piece from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch today that's on the outskirts of our broadcast area, but I think might have some implications for our broadcast area and folks that live in our broadcast area. The headline from Hannah Wyman of the Post-Dispatch: Rock Hill residents complain that air smells like pot. City asks the state to investigate. Now, if this were just a municipal issue, I wouldn't have it up on johncombest.com. But as the headline notes, Rock Hill officials are asking the state of Missouri to get involved here. Here's how Hannah describes it. City officials have asked the state to investigate a strong, skunky smell that has been wafting across the area, emanating from a large cannabis grower here. Garrett Schlett, Rock Hill's city administrator, says he has seen an uptick in complaints over the past few months from residents who say they can smell marijuana from different parts of this small city. The odor is potent and can travel. Sometimes, he said, they can smell the cannabis at City Hall, a half-mile north of the 60,000 square foot warehouse in the Rock Hill Industrial Court, where Missouri-based, proper brands, they're not an improper pothead ditchweed shop. No, they're proper brands, cultivates cannabis and manufactures a range of products. So Schlett says, quote, we get complaints near Tillis Park and from people who live in condos on McKnight Road. Some people that live on the other side of the neighborhood smell it, really from all around. Now, Mr. Proper Brands, their CEO is John Pennington. He says the cannabis odor can escape when employees enter or exit the warehouse and the scent is picked up by the wind. The smell has no negative effects on anyone's health. We'll never have the elimination of the odor. It's just the nature of it. We understand the concerns. What we're doing is very compliant and very safe. And for young men and women out there, if you're looking to become a better writer, remember, you can always eliminate the word very from your quotes, from your writing. If you're writing for someone else, there's no such thing as very compliant. You're compliant or you're not. You're not. There's no such thing as very safe. You're either safe or you're not. Anyway, Brad, as we get to it, my favorite quote from here, and by the way, Hannah goes to Lisa Cox, who's a spokeswoman for the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, that they've gotten the odor complaints and they will investigate to see if Proper Brands is violating any state cannabis regulations. But my favorite quote of Hannah's story, she goes around town, she does a little old-fashioned shoe leather journalism, and she talks to some folks, including a bartender at the Trainwreck Saloon on Manchester Road, a woman named Jennifer Fraley. She says the smell has gotten stronger over the past year. It's most potent in the mornings or when the weather is humid. Still, customers don't seem to mind, Fraley said, and are not deterred from sitting outside. Here's the money quote. Older people don't like it. Most everyone else already smokes. So that's a nice spirited comment, don't you think, Brad? Old people like Brad and John might not like it, but everybody else already smokes, bro. What's the deal with the little cannabis in the air, man?
John, you can't be very compliant, but can you be semi-compliant? Is that possible?
You can. And sometimes when you get a semi, you're like Brad, you go to your urologist and say, I don't want a semi. I want it either up or down. You know what I'm saying?
No, I got hit by a semi. That's a whole nother story. Okay, a couple of questions. This is not where people are smoking it. This is where they're growing it. Am I getting this correct?
Yeah. So, and I was surprised by that too. So it's not a smoking complaint.
Yes.
Like when you and I go to a shopping center and kvetch on the radio about it, I think it's actually, so as I understand the complaint, it's the actual smell of the plant and the, like if you were to take a bag of bud and put it up to your nose, bro, there would be that kind of a smell, not like some pothead in a parking lot smoking.
John, you being an agricultural guy and you working for Monsanto and being literally out in the fields with farmers, is there a smell for corn crops? Is there a smell for bean crops? Like when you walk through those crops, can you smell it?
I wouldn't know. I can't say I mean, you can smell things like fertilizer. You could smell things like 2,4-D or certain herbicides, but I can't say you can smell corn or beans or cotton or wheat. Those are the crops with which I have experience.
So marijuana in its growing state emits a smell.
I think if we had a pothead on the show, no, we shouldn't call one, but if we had a pothead on the show, they would probably be able to explain that when the plant is in a flowering stage or in a reproductive stage, easy, Brad, when they're in that kind of a stage, they probably emit some sort of an odor, whereas if they're in a more nascent stage, they don't.
Years ago, did you ever eat at there were two of them in St. Louis, the KC Masterpiece restaurants? Do you know what I'm talking about, John?
I did, yeah. There was one at Lindbergh and 40, right?
Yeah.
Or Lindbergh and what was that, Lindbergh and Olive?
Yeah, right. I think the back of it was on the Monsanto campus. It was right there.
You're exactly right. It was, yep. Sometimes if you were going the wrong way, you could turn around in the KC Masterpiece lot. Yeah, I do remember KC Masterpiece. And weren't people complaining about having a KC Masterpiece there?
That was the story I was going after. KC Masterpiece got really big because of the fact that it was a doctor out of Kansas City who came up with it, and he came up with the barbecue sauce and had his restaurants there. And for a while, the Lay's potato chips were branded as KC Masterpiece barbecue chips. And they wanted to put in a restaurant right there in Creve Coeur, and the local residents went, "Oh, we don't want that barbecue smell in our neighborhood." So literally, the city council of Creve Coeur, I'm not making this up, this is an honest-to-God true story, they chartered a bus. And they went, or either that or they flew to Kansas City. I can't remember which one. They flew to Kansas City. Somehow they got to Kansas City. And they drove around the neighborhood of one of the KC Masterpiece barbecue places in Kansas City and decided that the smell was not that aromatic. And they allowed the KC Masterpiece to be built in Creve Coeur. Is that bizarre or what?
It's remarkable, and that's how bandanas started their smell that smoke, because we're not Casey Masterpiece. That was the original version of it.
That was the original jingle. Okay, we ready for number 2?
Give it to me, Brad.
Up a notch to number 2.
Yesterday was a serious day of mourning, not just in St. Louis, or across Missouri, but across the world to mark the 1-year anniversary of that fascist Donald Trump. And by the way, all of us critics of Trump are correct. The stock market has plunged to its lowest level since the Great Depression. We're fighting dozens of wars. There's destruction all around the United States. We called it here on the American left. And there were 2 protests in St. Louis City yesterday. Channel 4 went to one of them, and it was at the place that was called out last week by the great Brad Hildebrand, the Tam Avenue overpass. A bunch of hippies and various ragtag protesters got together to beat on drums and wave some rainbow flags and talk about fascism. And my favorite quote from Channel 4, they found a woman who's a protester with a group called 50501. And they're sorry, it's hard to say this with a straight face. And they said their protest, their version of the protest was called the Free America Walkout. And this woman, as you can see on the Channel 4 video, she calls herself Zen Resister, Zenresister. So what I can't figure out is, if you're Zen, isn't the point of being Zen to not resist? Or is she a Zen resistor because she's resisting chaos? I don't understand. Like, if you're Zen, you're supposed to be, as I understand it, in a very natural stoic state, and you're not bothered by chaos around you. So I would suggest that Zen Resistor go back to the drawing board when it comes to her name. But Brad, that's not the main story here. What I wanted to bring up was there were protests in Springfield, Missouri, down I-44 way. And what was curious about those protests is there was a protest at Central High School in Springfield. And according to this piece in the Springfield News Leader, Central High School is among the most diverse among all Springfield public schools. And students walked out of class yesterday. That's how they show that they don't support President Trump. That's how they show that they're in mourning for what has happened to our nation. And what's curious about this protest is one of the protest leaders that organized fellow students to play hooky says that Springfield Public Schools actually endorsed the walkout. She says that they, quote, worked with Springfield Public Schools to ensure that no one would get in trouble for participating in the protest. So in other words, we have a public school system that's saying, hey, kids, you know what? Leave class, play hooky. In fact, the principal came out and said, let me read this quote to you. The principal said he thanks the organizers and those gathered for their, quote, courage. Now, Brad, can you imagine? Remember a couple months ago when a big, dumb, stinky savage stabbed that white girl on public transportation? Do you remember that story, Brad?
I do.
Can you imagine in a school district if a bunch of conservative kids said, hey, we want to protest a wild immigrant savage stabbing a beautiful white woman? We'd like to protest today. Do you think they would be well received by school administrators?
I do not think so, and I do not think that the administrator would call them or say they had courage. I think that would be not the situation, John.
They would be, well, I doubt that they would be revered as these students are. So if I was in Springfield and I was at the next, school board meeting or something like that, I'd probably ask, hey, at what point do we draw a line of endorsing protests or endorsing students skipping school? And what I love about some of these stories, and I say love sincerely, not sarcastically, is that a lot of times reporters will report on a student protest, whether it's Francis Howell, students marching down Mid-Rivers Mall Drive, or in the Hazelwood School District during the St. George Floyd protests. When you have protesters skipping school, kids skipping school, we act like it's courageous. Brad, you would have walked out of school if, somebody decided that Farrah Fawcett, well, bad example, she was already not popular. I guess she wasn't popular then. But if some starlet, decided to join an anti-war movement, you would have probably joined the protest because you wanted to skip class. Like, what's the big deal? Why do we celebrate kids skipping class?
John, how did you know about that? My past like that. I walk out of a school when Betty Grable was being criticized in the press. So, that's my heritage. And,
I thought you were a Dietrich guy.
No. Okay.
I thought you were more of a Marlene Dietrich guy. I was a Jane Mansfield guy in a previous life. I'll just say that.
An interesting part of your story there was which sort of the hair in the back of my head stood up, or the back of my neck stood up, courtesy of Hans Wyman, that when you mentioned the Zen Resistor, before we have our current transmitter, our other transmitter went bad, and we blew a Zen resistor and a Zen capacitor. So I know exactly what those Zen things can do. It can be...
Have you ever tried to buy one of those on eBay? It's almost impossible to find them in their original packaging.
There's a lot of things impossible to find on eBay anymore. Okay, ready for number one?
Yeah, Brad.
The number one.
If I sound like a frazzled country and rock star this morning, it's because I was up late last night once again with the Gatlin brothers. We had to do a remix of their popular song about the echo camps. You want to hear it, Brad?
Oh my God, go ahead.
All the gold in Franklin County is in a bank at 200 West Main Street. It's still in the Echo Camp family name. But if you're dreaming about data centers, it don't matter at all what your lobbyist pays. Franklin County says wait 180 days. 180 days. Oh, Brad. It's bad news if you want to push a data center into Franklin County, because last night there was a raucous meeting at Franklin County about zoning as it related to the Echo Camps data center. Now, for folks in Franklin County yesterday, and this story is brought to us by St. Louis Magazine, and Eric Schmidt, not to be confused with the T.T. Schmidt, but SCHMIDT, reported on the fact that Franklin County got together last night to discuss data center regulations and zoning. And the story broke over in the Post-Dispatch over the weekend, and it also was on St. Louis Public Radio over the weekend. So yesterday there was a public meeting where hundreds attended in Franklin County. And as Eric Schmidt of St. Louis Magazine points out, almost everyone who showed up to the meeting was there in opposition to the data centers. And in fact, Franklin County at first, in the face of this, someone suggested, why don't we wait a year? Why don't we put a ban on data centers for a year until we study this? And then someone else pointed out that it would take a very special, specific act of the council to wait a year to table something. So then someone said, well, maybe 4 months. And then someone said, maybe a month. The chronology of this and how they were proposed might be out of order here. I don't have Schmidt's piece in front of me. But then eventually the council agreed on a 6-month moratorium, Brad. So no data center in Franklin County for at least 6 months. I should say there will not be a vote on a data center for at least 6 months. So this would appear to underscore one of your favorite themes and memes, which is when someone tries to bring a data center, or as you would say, some sort of progress into an area, like Mr. L.B. Eckelkamp Jr. is doing with the data center, there are a lot of people that you call CAVE, Citizens Against Virtually Everything, and NIMBYs, of course, not in my backyard type people, that say, nope, we don't want that here in our county. And that seems to be the case in Franklin County now.
The sad thing about this is, and I'll say this again, the Echo Camps through the Bank of Washington are sponsors of this radio station, and I will make that clear. I think they do a lot of good for the community. If they weren't a sponsor of the radio station, I would say the same thing. They have done a great job of supporting a lot of things in Franklin County and beyond because they own things outside of Franklin County. But this is the same thing over and over and over again that, these got to go somewhere. And to the point where I give my example of the people who complain about cell phone towers, but yet they want their cell phone to work. It's just the same thing. They want
hey, but there's a lot of these protests in China. A lot of the Chinese people, they have a lot of free voice and democracy there, and they're protesting these things here too, Brett. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I should correct myself here. The group that got together to meet, and I didn't have the piece in front of me at the time, was actually the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Oh, the P&Z.
In Franklin County.
Okay.
And I believe I said the county council or the city council.
Yeah.
So I was incorrect there. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, the P&Z. Okay, see, once again.
Once again, and here we go again, Brad. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that before we go to break, as an honorable mention today, there's a piece in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on the St. Charles County executive race, particularly the money race between Jason Law and Steve Ellman and Bill Eigel. The piece quotes Steve Ellman as saying he needs to do a better job raising money. You think? Also quotes Sophie Shore from Bill Eigel's campaign and John Conlon from Jason Law's campaign. So I'd be remiss if I didn't point that out. Brad, you and I discussed that on Friday, and I was lamenting the fact that local media, of course, paid no attention to the fundraising. So several days later, the Post-Dispatch gets in on the act. So congratulations to the Post.
They listen to us, John. That's all there is to it,
Well, I don't know if Ethan Colbert is hanging out with Steven or what the deal is, Brad. But anyway, I hope I didn't preempt anything from Brad's top three.
Well, you did, but I'm going to let that slide because it's sort of tangential. I don't think I've ever used that word on the station before with you, John. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to rejigger my top three. I'm just going to essentially present a different aspect of that, which is ironically my number one. But anyway, we'll get onto that because it's the B block up next. And what do we do in the B block, John?
It's time for Brad's top three.
We get that out of the way early this time. First time you've ever done that in the A block. Okay, here we go. We'll be back.